Okay, just quickly to make sure we know where we are. Beginning of the Mimer, we said Pode, besholom, nafshi, mikravli, that there are three different kufas, three different periods that relate to the idea of Pode besholom, times of tremendous sholom. What was that? Shlomo Melech, the first, and then Mashiach. The ultimate expression of sholom will be in the times of Mashiach, but in Mashiach, in the times of Mashiach itself, the first kufa, the first period, and the second period. Right? And the Rebbe said the difference between the two was that the first period will be a time of an end of Shibud Malchius, an end of a time when we're ruled by other people, have a beis hamikdash, there'll be a melech, etc., and the world will all get along, which is also quite miraculous. But the nature of the world will be the same as it is now. The second kufa, so that's when the pasuk which says, "But God is evim keves," that the wolf will lay with the lamb, that is talking about the second kufa, and that pasuk is not an allegory, that pasuk is literal. Okay, meaning they will literally lay down together. In other words, the wolves aren't going to eat lambs, they're going to eat grass, like the pasuk about the Arya that we saw. Arya kabaka yechol tevin. Okay. In the second, the Rebbe explained the difference between tefillah and Torah. Birur, the rectification that's brought about by even shel milchama, it's a battle, that's davening, as opposed to the rectification of both the one learning, and it's also the one davening, the one learning and the world at large, b'derech menucha, calm, that's learning Torah. You sit and learn Torah about something, you're not encountering it directly, but you're elevating it. So what's the difference between the two, the Rebbe said? Hislavshus. Are you clothed in that object? Meaning, are you directly confronting that object that you're trying to elevate? When you're davening, your nefesh elokis is trying to elevate your nefesh bahamis, and your nefesh elokis has to directly confront the nefesh bahamis and get the nefesh bahamis to daven. There's no props. The nefesh bahamis, conscious me, has to say that God's great. Well, that's a milchama to get the nefesh bahamis to do that. Right? Whereas tefillah, they're davening, Torah, sit down and learn and elevate and shine a very powerful godly light on all sorts of different states of reality. That was beis. Gimel, the Rebbe explained the difference between learning nigla and learning pnimius. That the greatest expression of calm is dafka pnimius, as opposed to nigla, where there's a battle and where Rav is trying to destroy Abaya's position, etc. Whereas that doesn't happen in pnimius and Torah. Then in Daled, the Rebbe told us that the oifen halimud of pnimius is different than the oifen halimud of nigla, right? So therefore the birur is different, the way we learn it. Again, no questions. Pnimius is just an expression of truth, as opposed to the war that goes on in a piece of Gemara. If you don't look at this, it's irrelevant. Okay, that's really good, but this is where it's at. We're going to be on page Kuf, page Vav. We're starting the 6th chapter. What did you do with the copy I gave you yesterday?
I gave it back to you.
You gave it back to me? Okay. Okay. Now I'm out of copies. That's it. I'm done. Okay. So in Ois Daled, the Rebbe talked about the difference in nigla and pnimius relative to how we learn them. Then in Ois Hey, the Rebbe said there's actually two different levels of pnimius Torah. There's the learning of pnimius Torah, the intellectual understanding of Chassidus that we do now. So our relationship to those levels of godly reality is completely intellectual. That means it doesn't become part of me. It's something I understand, but it's still something separate from me. As opposed to the second level, which we'll experience b'Immerse Mashiach, is re'iyah, seeing Elokus, as opposed to simply understanding its existence. We see Elokus the way we see physicality now. Okay, so those are now, and that's going to come up right now. But therefore, we've now conveniently understood that there are three different levels of Torah. There's nigla, and two different levels of pnimius. Right, so that's going to correspond to Shlomo Melech, and the first Kuf of Mashiach and the second Kuf of Mashiach, those three different levels of Torah. And that's what I was going to say right now in Vav. Okay. Ba'al pi kol hanal, based on everything that we have learned up until now, yesh levar, one can explain. Page Kuf Pei Daled, Ois Vav. Dagam she'inyan Pode besholom, that even though this idea of Pode besholom, hayagam b'mei Shlomo, it was also in the time of Shlomo Melech, Mikol Makim, nevertheless, that's what we said in the very beginning of the Maimer, Hashleimish of the completion of this, the wholeness of this, Yeh b'yemei Mashiach, will be in the days of Mashiach. Ubi b'yemei Mashiach Gufa, and in the days of Mashiach themselves, b'tkufa beis, in the second period of Mashiach, right? Which again we talked about in the beginning of the Maimer. First period of Mashiach, Melech Mashiach is revealed, the Beis Hamikdash is built. Am Yisrael is in Eretz Yisrael with a Melech, and we're doing everything we're supposed to be doing the way we're supposed to do it, and the world is in a state of peace, and things are amazing. Okay, that's the first kufa. But the world works the same way the world works, and you'll eat breakfast. You'll have cornflakes with a banana sliced on top of it, just like you might now. Okay, whether it's Talma cornflakes, Kellogg's cornflakes, I don't know. I don't want to get personal. Okay. Second kufa, a complete change in the metaphysical reality of the world. Right. So not only will the animals get along, which is obviously supernatural, humans getting along seems rather, as there's a word in Yiddish, far-fetched. It seems rather far-fetched, the idea of human beings getting along. Okay, but human beings do have the intellectual ability to decide that getting along is a good idea. We've done this before. We started something called the League of Nations. We started something called the United Nations. They don't work, but the idea is a good idea. No, seriously, that human beings, the idea of human beings getting along isn't so off the wall. It's just a matter of human beings getting it together and acting like healthy human beings. Okay, whereas a lion and a sheep getting along is supernatural, because the nature of the lion is to eat the sheep. That's what a lion does. So that's a complete change in the nature of the world. Humans getting along is theoretically possible, right? I mean, it's happened. I've seen two people get along before. I was on a bus, and the two guys talking to each other, and they're having a good time. It was amazing. It was an amazing thing. I took a picture of it. It was amazing. Well, that's what can happen. Animals, not so common, right? Why? It was unnatural. That will change. So that's the second kufa, right? Will there be brownies hanging on the trees? Well, something along those lines, right? That ma'adonim will be, sweets, goodness will be, and it won't even be bad for you eating the brownie. I don't know whether you're going to want to eat the brownie, but whatever. A completely different metaphysical state. That's the kufa base. Also, what happens in the second kufa of Mashiach, that does happen to a certain degree in the first, but not to everybody. What happens?
Resurrection.
Right, Tchias HaMesim, B'diuk, right? So Tchias HaMesim for the tzaddikim will happen right away, the Rebbe says. As soon as Mashiach comes, there's a good chance you're going to meet Rabbi Akiva, right? You'll definitely meet the Baal Shem Tov, the Alter Rebbe, Frierdiker Rebbe. They'll all be here. All the tzaddikim will come, right? That's the first kufa, which always, of course, means that those neshamas up there in Gan Eden who have been used to bringing without the Alter Rebbe every Shabbos, so they're going to be left there alone. Going to come to shul up there in Gan Eden, and where are all the tzaddikim? They're gone. What is this vision? So it takes about 40 years before Tchias HaMesim starts for everybody. Mashiach could be up to 40 years of the Tkufa of Mashiach before the resurrection happens for everybody, meaning everybody comes back into their goof. So I always had this vision. I mean, it's a ridiculous vision, but all the tzaddikim have come here. Everybody else is up there, and you get a number. And there's one of those boards like in the bank, and you have your little number. You're waiting, like, when do I get to go back down into Elamaza and Neshama and a goof, and there's 600,000 something numbers, and you're number 494,608, so you're sort of waiting a while. Won't be so many people left when you're, that's the way it goes. But it is going to be interesting up there when the neshamas of the tzaddikim are all back down here, so it's all right. They have a revelation of God up there. They'll be okay, don't worry.
600,000, millions and millions.
Yeah, millions and millions, but 600,000 soul roots. So yeah, there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of neshamas.
Rabbi,
They've all got to come.
When it comes down and you assume you're a goof, will your goof look a lot better than when you were alive?
Interesting question as to whether someone who passed away very, very old and feeble, there's people who pass away young, there's people who pass away, regularly old, and then there's people who pass away extremely old and extremely, just old. Interesting question, I don't know. I remember walking into the study hall of the Sem in Milan. And at the end, it was a long, thin room, and there was 2 pictures of the Rebbe. There was a relatively young Rebbe at that end, and a picture of the Rebbe that I think most of us would recognize as the Rebbe that we sort of think of at that end, gray beard, etc. And this was a young Rebbe with a salt and pepper beard. So I asked Mrs. Gorelick, what's pshat in the 2 pictures? So she said, now Mrs. Gorelick went on Shlichus in 1959, right? The Rebbe was their Masada Kedushin. The Rebbe did their wedding, and then they went almost immediately on Shlichus to Milan. So when she left the Rebbe, when she left New York, obviously she went back and forth, but when she left New York, the Rebbe was a young man. That's the Rebbe she remembers. So. She said, well, my daughter and I have a machlekes, we have a disagreement. Next time we see the Rebbe, what does he look like? I say like that, and my daughter says like that. Taka, who knows? I don't know. What's the Frida Rebbe going to look like when the Frida Rebbe is coming back? Here's amazing Mashiach is coming, today, Mamish Mashiach is coming, the Frida Rebbe will be walking around in Eilam Hazah. What's he going to look like? He's definitely not going to be in a wheelchair. That's for sure, right? Is he going to be that that young Frierdiker Rebbe with the almost red beard? I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. I guess we should work on being serious people and bring Mashiach. Serious doesn't mean serious with a frown on your face. Serious besimcha. We should be serious and do what we have to do and bring Mashiach, and then we'll know. We'll get an answer to all these questions. Right? In the meantime, it's it is what it is. So the Rebbe, therefore, is based on this, the Yesh Leimar. Gentlemen, the Yesh Leimar. Should Gimel dark. I don't let 18-year-old girls talk in class, and I don't let old men talk in class either. So that's the way it goes.
Which one you're talking about, Mrs. Grelick? Who grew up in Pittsburgh.
Taka, okay, right, that's true. She's a Posner, right, okay.
She was here last week.
Oh, yeah?
From love for
She's
great
an amazing
grandson's
lady.
wedding.
She is an amazing lady. Amazing.
Of course, in Pittsburgh.
No, that's not why she's amazing. She's an amazing lady because she's such a chassid. She's something else. Right? She told me a story when they went to they first went on Shlichus. So in 1959, there were no direct flights New York, Milan. They flew to Paris on a propeller plane. I just can't imagine crossing the Atlantic Ocean on a propeller plane, but okay. They flew to Paris. They spent some time in Paris, and then they went to Milan by train. It's so you travel still. So you travel in Europe. So they went. They had the Rebbe made a special farbrengen for them. They left on Yud Kislev, which is what this 9/7 is Shayach Yud Kislev. So they left on Yud Kislev, and the Rebbe made a second farbrengen just for them when they were leaving. And they went into Yechidus by the Rebbe, and when they were in Yechidus, so the Rebbe got up and took a Tanya off the shelf and gave them a Tanya to take with them to Milan. Then the Rebbe got up again later and gave them another Tanya and told them this is to give to someone if you happen to meet someone who needs a Tanya on the way, so this is to give to them. Fine. So they get on the plane and they sit down. The plane takes off. It's about 4 feet off the ground. Gershon Mendel takes off his seatbelt. Her husband takes off the seatbelt and starts looking around with the Tanya for someone to give the Tanya to. He's got a shlichus to the Rebbe. He's got to give the Tanya to someone. So he's looking up and down, and he can't. They're telling him sit down. He says, "No, I have to sit down." So he can't find anybody in coach. He pulls up the curtain and walks up into. There was no business in those days. He walks into first class. And he looks around for someone. He doesn't see anybody who's sharp to the time. He sits back down to his wife, and she explains it better than him. The Russian came out in him. We're failures. It's a disaster. Our shlichus only started, and we didn't do the first thing, and we're a disaster. Yeah, Russian, just complete and total Russian angst spilling all over the plane. So she said, that's all right. And then about an hour later, a young man, now this is 1959, no one knows what Lubavitch is, no one knows, right? So a young man, American college student age, comes up to them and says, "Excuse me, you seem to be religious Jews. Could I ask you a question?" So there's a book that I found that's a fascinating book, and I've been learning it lately, and it's called Tanya. Would you happen to have one that I could use on the plane?
No.
So Gershon Mendel says, well, actually I have one that the Lubavitcher Rebbe gave for me earlier today for you. So here, you can take this time, and this is from the Lubavitcher Rebbe for you. That happened on the plane to Milan. Now, after 10 years of all those things happening, all those miracles happening in their shlichus, thing, one after the other, he was in Yechidus with the Rebbe, and the Rebbe said, when a child learns to walk, so you stand in front of him, you hold his hands while he's walking, and you might let go, but you're always there to make sure that he's walking. So, but at a certain point, the child walks by himself. The time has come that your shlichus needs a little less of my obvious involvement. Meaning no more miracles, is basically what the Rebbe said. There were crazy miracles in the early days. The famous, I'm going to tell one more because I can't not, that Rav Gorelick was asked, he was a young rabbi. Now, Rav Gorelick was not known as a great learner. He could learn Torah, obviously, right? He had been in Yeshiva, he could learn Torah, but he was not, that was not what he was known for. So he was asked to give a speech at a rabbinic conference in Europe when he got there. He was a young man, black beard, right, jet black, young, and he was, now, who were the Rabbanim in Europe in 1959? These were all the Rabbanim who had been in Europe before the war. These were the real thing, right? Like, this was Europe before the war. That's who was there. So there were still some Rabbanim. So he was a little intimidated by this. So he went to the Rebbe and asked the Rebbe So the Rebbe sat with him and basically gave him a whole pilpul, a whole, question, a Gemara to quote and a question from Rishonim. The Rebbe gave him a whole pilpul to say over. So, fine, he was ready to go. He's sitting in the conference, and the person who's speaking before him is a very elderly Rav, and the elderly Rav is saying over exactly the same pilpul, same questions, same Gemara that Rebbe prepared him with. So he's having a fit, because he's what's going to be. He doesn't have anything to say. So then in the middle of this gentleman's Devar Torah, he starts to feel faint, and he says, I can't continue, I'm sorry, I don't feel well, so then they ask the next person to speak. So Gershon Mendel, being smart enough to do this, said, of course I had prepared a pilpul of my own, but in deference to our great Rav, who started his pilpul, I think it's only right in honor of him that I will finish what he had to say. And then he finishes the pilpul that now no one can do that. Man. Right? But that's the pilpul the Rebbe told him about in the office. So he just finished the Devar Torah that guy was saying. So they all now thought that this young man from Milan was the greatest genius they had ever met. That was another little tidbit that happened in the beginning of his shlichus. Crazy, crazy stuff. Okay, let's go. V'yesh Leimar. 3 levels, Shleimer, and 2 levels of Mashiach. The Yesh Leimar, so Gimel Dargus Elo. These 3 levels, besholom in Sholem, B'yimei Shleimer, Shlomo Melech, B'tkufa Aleph, the Yemei Mashiach, the first period of Yemei Mashiach, U'b'tkufa Beis, and the second period of Yemei Mashiach. Heim Dugmas, they are similar to Gimel Hadargus and Al Shel B'Torah. These 3 different levels in Torah. Ve'inyan Hu, it's like this. Dezeh Shem Malchus Shva. That which Malchus Shva, we ran into her earlier, right? The Queen of Sheba, they say in English. But Malchus Shva. Shva was a kingdom in Africa, and the queen of that kingdom came to Yerushalayim, to Shlomo Melech. Why? Because she had heard of the greatness. So now the Rebbe explains that process. Shama, what does the pasuk say? Shama es Shema Shlomo. She heard about the greatness of Shlomo Melech. Shema, meaning the sound of Shlomo, literally, but the fame of him. Al Yadei Sheshmei, by virtue of the fact that his name, the Shem Hu Ha'ara, Shem is an illumination, it goes out from you and might be known somewhere else, even though you're not there. Nimshach was drawn, v'nispashet, and spread, l'merchochim, to great distances. Ad la'ard Shva, until it made it to places in Africa. Sheshlomo atzmai hayabim kemei, Shlomo Melech was in his place, in Yerushalayim. V'shem shalei, but his fame, Shemer Shlomo, Nimshach was drawn v'higia l'shva, reached as far as this African kingdom. V'kol ma she'amshacha nimshacha l'makom rachok, and to the extent that this drawing down of light, Amshach is drawing down of light, but in this case the spreading out of Shlomo's name, is drawn to a place farther away, farther away. What happens to that name? What's the root of that word? Mit katenet. What's the root? Katan, small. It shrinks, it gets smaller. Right? The farther away from Yerushalayim, the less fame Shlomo Melech would have. Well, that makes sense. Right? And there might be a place where they haven't heard of Shlomo Melech. If it's that far away. Val derech zeh, and in this way, gam b'negei l'bidur gufa, relative to the rectification that Shlomo Melech is bringing about in the world. The gam la'achrei shemalchus shva, that even afterward, Malchus Shva, Sham'a Hashem Shlomo. She heard about the fame of Shlomo. Did that bring about the ultimate birur in her? No, absolutely not. What did she have to do in order to bring about a true birur, a true rectification in herself? She had to actually come to Yerushalayim to be with Shlomo Melech. That the birur that was that, so this is a birur that took a certain amount of work and a certain amount of what we might call, relatively, the Rebbe talked about this relative to learning Nigla, hislavshus, involving yourself in the world and the difficulties of the world. She heard about Shlomo. Hutzrach was necessary liyos to be the next part of the pasuk. V'tava Yerushalma. She came to Yerushalayim. Sha'alicha mishva Yerushalayim. That obviously this traveling from Shva to Yerushalayim lekeich meshech zman. It took time, v'tircha, and effort. V'rak az, and only then nasa birur. Only then was there a true birur of Malchus Shva. So it took effort. So it was relatively b'derech menucha, because Shlomo Melech didn't have to go to her. Shlomo Melech sat where he was, and the of Shlomo brought about a birur in her. That's similar to sitting in your living room and learning Torah and bringing about a birur in that reality you're discussing when you're learning Torah. We learned about relative to Nigla. But in terms of the difference between Nigla and Chassidus, so Nigla will involve a certain hislavshus, a certain involvement in the world, still an involvement that's very, very different than Tefillah, but still an involvement. And that's similar to Shlomo Melech and Malchus Shva. Mitzad echad, Shlomo Melech is sitting in his place and bringing about a birur in her. On the other hand, the birur requires a certain amount of effort. So too the birur of learning Nigla. The birur of learning Nigla is I'm going to have to involve myself in all the craziness of Olam Hazeh ad kedei kach that I might even learn about people lying in court. So I'll have to deal with sheker. I'll have to deal with the lack of truth, even though I'm learning it in the truth of the Torah. But I'm learning about something that's the opposite of truth. Okay, so that's Nigla. So this is similar to Nigla. But Dugmas, the Rebbe says, similar to a birur shayidei galia the Torah, similar to the rectification that comes as a result of learning Gemara, Halacha, etc. Nigla. So that was the first level. And then when the Rebbe had argued, right, in his Gimel, the Rebbe explained the difference between Nigla and Pnimis in this way. Right, that even though certainly Torah is Torah, and we're going to see this in Zion, Torah is Torah. It's all Torah, it's all the Eibishter. But there's different expressions of it in Olam Hazeh. So the most peaceful expression is Pnimius. What are you talking about? Elokus. I'm not talking about anything that might distance you from an appreciation of godliness. Whereas when you're learning a page of Gemara, the Eibishter isn't even a mention. Right? It's Torah. But the Eibishter is not on the page. He is the page. But you don't see him unless you have the eyes to see him. And then what are you learning about? Oxen goring cows and people arguing as to how much a young woman should get after, God forbid, she gets divorced. And so there's a ksuva, and is the ksuva 200? Is the ksuva 100? Or if she didn't get divorced, her husband died, because she only gets the ksuva in those two situations, so it's only relevant to come to court in those two situations. Okay, so that's what we talk about. But it's still Torah, and still elevating the learner and that reality by virtue of the fact that it's part of the Torah. But there's an involvement in physicality. Mashain Kain, that's not the case. Habirur, Shia v'Yemesa Mashiach. The rectification that will be in the days of Mashiach. Kavan. Since Sha'az, and if you look at footnote 36, just the first three words, Gam betkufa rishona, even in the first period of Mashiach. Right? Actually, you know what? It's worth. Let's leave it at this point. Kevin Sha'az, even in the first kufa, Yehagilui dar ein seif, what will be revealed? A level of godly light, habilti gvul, that is infinite, shekedem etzimtzum, that existed before the first constriction of godly light. I mean, an unbelievably powerful level of godly revelation will be revealed in this world. A level of infinite godly light. How that will be revealed in the context of a finite world, I don't know. But for the Eibishter, that's not an issue. For you and I, that might be hard to understand. But for Kadosh Baruch Hu, that's not hard to understand, not hard to do. Okay, so even in the first kufa, there'll be an incredibly powerful revelation of God. The Arzeh, this level of light, hu b'kol makom b'shava, is in every place equally. It's a level of infinite light, therefore it's not differentiated from higher or lower, so to speak. Lochein, therefore, ya'az habidur, therefore the rectification of the world will be loy ba'ofen shel hamshachas v'yorida sa'or lamata, not in a fashion of the light being drawn down and descending below, which is one level of explaining how birur happens. We'll talk about it in a second. Let's see the words. Vahalos, and the elevation of a mizbader lamayla, and the elevation of the one being rectified above. Meaning there's a two-way traffic between you and I and a Kadosh Baruch Hu in terms of how we relate to him. The Eibishter is allowing godly light and godly energy to descend into the world, which we become sensitive to, hopefully. But we're also elevating ourselves from below above. What's the mashal the Rebbe just used? Malchus Shva. The name of Shlomo Melech is descending down to Shva. And what does that cause? What does that necessitate in order to bring about the proper birur? That Malchus Shva has to elevate back up to Shlomo Melech. She has to go to where Shlomo Melech is. As much as Shlomo Melech has come to her, but Shlomo Melech himself has not come to her. Only the fame of Shlomo Melech has come to her. The realization, the recognition that there's such a state of reality, and she wants to be part of that reality. She wants to be part of that holiness. But she can't be part of that holiness where she is. She has to elevate herself to a higher place. Okay, so very much our avoid is similar to that we become sensitive to the fact that there's something called godly reality, where we have to elevate ourselves from where we are to a place where we're more likely to be a kli, to be a vessel, to be a receptacle for that level of godly reality. That's one level of the relationship between the above and the below. There's another level, when the revelation of Elokus is so powerful that it basically annihilates the whole reality of above and below. There is no above and below. There's just Eibishter. Oh, that's Immerse. There'll be a revelation of godly light so powerful that there will be no difference between that godly light where you and I are and where it is in its source. Right? And the Rebbe made a point of distinguishing between Shlomo Melech's reality in Yerushalayim and Shlomo Melech's fame in Shva. There's a difference. Right? There's a great difference because Shlomo Melech's he's not in Shva, he's in Yerushalayim. Okay, if Shlomo Melech would go to Shva, so obviously his effect on Shva would be much greater, right? Be quite astounding. Mm-hmm. But that didn't go to Shva. She came to him. Okay, so that's one level of birur. But then there's and that's the birur that shaykh to Shlomo Melech. A very, very positive reality and complete reality in Eilam Hazeh, but not as complete as it ultimately is destined to be. When's that happening? Mashiach. What's Mashiach? A revelation of godly light that's so powerful that godliness is revealed everywhere in the same way. So I don't have to go anywhere. So to speak, he comes to me. Now, he doesn't really come to me because he's here anyway. He reveals himself where he is. Mm-hmm. Because the Eibush is a little less limited than Shlomo Melech.
The first level of Shlomo Melech initiates.
Well, it's not even initiates. Shlomo Melech sits in his place, and he is just Shlomo Melech. So by virtue of being Shlomo Melech, that positive energy goes out from Shlomo Melech and reaches very, very many places. But the Rebbe says something very, very interesting. By definition, the fact that the farther it goes, the more limited it is. There'll come a point where someone has never heard of Shlomo Melech. There's somewhere out there.
That's the first period.
That's the first period. There's someone out there. I mean, on the other side of Shiva, whatever. Right? It's, today, everything goes everywhere. Okay, Beseder. But in those days, Rashi wrote a parish on Chumash 1,000 years ago. There's no printing press. Every Jew in the world was learning Rashi's parish on Chumash within 50 years of him writing it. That is absolutely astounding. There's no printing press. In North Africa, everybody's learning Chumash with Rashi's parish. When the Ramban writes a parish on Chumash, he says, I'm looking at the two great perushim, and I'll look at them, and my parish will be written in the context of theirs. And who are they? Rashi and the Ibn Ezra. The Ibn Ezra was in Spain. The Ramban could have been in North Africa, could have been in Spain, because it was in different places at different times. Not the Ramban, Nachmanides, another doctor, but Nachmanides. Okay, which is basically in terms of Pshat, the second most important, so to speak, parish. Obviously, Rashi is, the Ramban says about Rashi, Lo Mishpat Bechorah. He has the law of firstborn, Rashi. So he never, ever, he argues with Rashi, but he never, ever says anything that you might think is lacking respect. It's not lacking respect, this is the way the Rishonim talk. But he never says anything harsh about Rashi. He'll disagree, but he will never say anything harsh. Whereas relative to Ibn Ezra, he calls him an idiot walking in the darkness, says this is just ridiculous. But he says in his introduction that with the Ibn Ezra, Tochacha megula va'ahava mesutara. Open rebuke, but hidden love. He's learning the Ibn Ezra. Obviously, he thinks the Ibn Ezra is worth learning. Right? He's saying, I'm looking at two people when I explain the Torah. Ibn Ezra and Rashi. Those are the two people I'm going to be dealing with when I write my parish. So obviously, he thinks the Ibn Ezra is something, but he'll say things to the Ibn Ezra that he would say to other Rishonim also. Right? He talks the Rambam was put in Cherem for writing Mar Nevuchim. The Ramban took him out. He was a very big fan, so to speak, of the Rambam. But he says, relative to certain things, the Rambam says, Karav l'kfira. This is close to blasphemy. Right? He would never say that about Rashi. He says he's not going to say that about Rashi. Right? Okay. Rashi's parish on Chumash was everywhere in the Jewish world 50 years after he wrote it without a printing press. That is pashut unbelievable. Okay. But obviously the people in France had a closer relationship to Rashi and his parish than the people farthest away, as much as they knew who Rashi was, but that was Rashi, as opposed to Rashi. Right? Okay. So that's Shlomo Melech. And that's a regular birur. The Eibishter, so to speak, is up there. Godliness is emanating down to you and I. In order we become a bit sensitive to that and aware of that, then we have to elevate ourselves up and come close to it to truly bring about a birur in ourselves. If I stay where I am, so okay, I'm aware of something that's not really affecting me so much. To do the hard work, to go closer to it. It's hard work. It's worth it. It's hard work. Our daughter flew from England to Vancouver yesterday. She just landed an hour ago, and she's now sitting with her grandmother, my mother. So her son, her husband, our son-in-law, put a picture. Where there's that thing where you know where the plane is. Right, so he takes a picture of her plane above Iceland about 2 hours after she took off. He said, "Boy, it's a long way." It is. It's a long way, right? So I wrote back. I said, "It is a long way, but the prize at the end is worth it." She's sitting with her grandmother, her 101-year-old grandmother, who I had a video hello with just before she's very excited that her granddaughter is there. Yeah, it's a long way, so to speak, but the prize at the end is worth it. It's worth it. What does that mean? Not the prize at the end that you're going to get a lollipop. If you do the hard work necessary, so then yes, there's a little bit of godliness in your life, and the prize is worth the hard work. It's worth the hard work. So that's how birur usually works. You Yemaisa Mashiach, the Abraham just reveals himself. He's here. He's everywhere. There's no difference. Up, down. There's no work. Right? And those people who did some work in Elam Hazan aren't even going to care that the people who didn't do the works also have a revelation of Elokus. because they're going to turn into normal people also. Right? And I can say, oh, I worked harder and so I should get more. Grow up. Right? God wants to be revealed. This is about God being revealed, not about your little, cheshbeinus as to how much you're supposed to get. I should have a bigger bank account. I worked harder. Right? So, Baruch Hashem, everybody will have it. We explained yesterday what the difference will be. The Rebbe Shab told us. We talked about it yesterday. You're going to look up in the sky and say, oh, that's Pode besholom, Tafshin Mem Aleph. Wow. Cool. Okay. Then what's going to be? Gilui Dorein Sefer Bilti Kul Shekedem Etzimtzum. There'll be a revelation of incredibly powerful godly light. That's Tekufa Rishona. Right? Okay, let me just look at footnote 36 just because it's so interesting. And that's Gam B'Tekufa Rishona, there'll be this very powerful revelation. And the Rebbe tells us where to look. Rabbi Baruch, you can see this at length, explained Dibra Maskeh v'Haya Ekev, Tafshin Chaf Zayin, a mimer the Rebbe that was said in 5727, which is 1967. But why is the Rebbe Dafka quoting that? Because there are all sorts of different sources for the same thing. Well, if you look at Le'il, earlier on in this book, Amad Samach Zayin, meaning it happens to be one of the edited mimer that's earlier in this book. So that's why the Rebbe is quoting specifically that mimer in this edited note. Meaning just look, turn the page back and you'll find a longer discussion of this. You don't even have to stand up. Sheyesh Leimer, that there is an opinion, one could say, Shechidish Tekufa Shniya. So if there's this incredibly powerful revelation of godly light already in the first era of Mashiach, so then what exactly happens in the second Kufa that's greater than that? Because we're talking about a level of the most powerful godly light that has ever been revealed, the light that it was revealed before Tzimtzum, the Rebbe says, right? The explosion of light that was so powerful that it had to be diminished in order for any aspect of worlds to possibly come into existence. Sha'az, what's going to be in the second Tkufa, the Rebbe says? The Tkufa Shniya, Sheyesh Leim HaChidush of Tkufa Shniya, who Sha'az Yeh Gilui Or Chadash. What this means, I don't know, but it's an amazing idea. Gilui Or Chadash, a revelation of a new light, Shaloi Heir Kedem Etzimtzum, that has never ever existed. A level of godly revelation that's beyond any level of godly revelation that existed, even that level of godly light that existed before the first tzimtzum, the first restriction of light. But this first level of infinite godly light that shone before tzimtzum, that will be Yegam B'Tekufa Rishona. That'll be in the first Tekufa. What'll happen in the second Tekufa? Even a higher level. Whatever that is. Okay. Fine. So in other words, there's going to be an incredibly powerful revelation that will be everywhere. And so I don't have to go anywhere. Therefore, it's the ultimate in menucha, which is what the Rebbe is trying to explain here. Therefore, as, the birur, the rectification will be not by virtue of the or descending down, like the name of Shlomo Melech, going to places far away. And then the level of reality below elevating itself to become closer and closer to its source, like Malchus Shva coming closer to Shlomo Melech. Why? Ki'im, rather, Sha'or Kameshu, the light as it is, Yar B'Kol Makom, will illuminate in every place. You don't have to go anywhere. And as a matter of fact, there won't even have to be any avodah. Meaning the avodah was done. Everything we're doing is the avodah to bring about this situation. Once this situation happens, there won't be avodah. What you and I call avodah Hashem won't exist. The Rebbe Shab actually said, when Mashiach comes, there's one thing we're going to look back on and miss. We're going to miss the challenge of trying to serve God in Elam Hazeh, because it'll all be done. We're going to look back and say, I missed the challenge. It's an amazing idea. Miss trying to serve God in the dark. Even though that ultimately the purpose is what does the Eibishter want? The Eibishter wants to be revealed. So it's not the Eibishter. So he got what he wanted. But the Rebbe Shab said, and of course the Rebbe Shab is the Rebbe of Avodah, meaning, if you, in terms of what was unique about the Rebbe Shab's contribution, so to speak, to Chassidus v'chuli, Avodah, just unbelievable. what he was, what he taught and what his Hasidim were doing. And he said it was all a preparation for the next generation, which is the generation was going to have to be Meser Nefesh, because the Rebbe Rashab passed away in 1920. Okay, that's a pretty interesting time to pass away in Russia. What was happening at that point and what had just happened and what was going to happen a year or two later when finally the Civil War ended and the Bolsheviks beat the Mensheviks and these people took over and they were horrible, terrible, evil people. And the Hasidim of the Rebbe became the Frierdiker Rebbe, who are known for, what was the Frierdiker Rebbe all about? Mesiras Nefesh, self-sacrifice. It's unbelievable self-sacrifice. Okay. But what was the prerequisite for that? What was necessary for that? The generation before. Rav Nanas we talked about this once. Rav Nanas once, it's a long story, but it was just he got into the Rebbe Rashab's house. He was close to the Rebbetzin, so he asked the Rebbetzin, could I talk to the Rebbe? And she said, yes, just wait in the house, and when he comes home, you can talk to him. So he and a couple of Bachrim were in the house, and they asked the Rebbe Rashab, why are things so hard? Which is so hard. Template Tamimim was tough. It was really tough. Very, 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 very hard. Right? 7 to 9 Chassidus, 12 to 8 Nigla, and then 9 to 11 Chassidus. Every single day, Friday, learning until 2 hours before Shabbos. A Bacher walked into the Yeshiva and was not allowed a day off for the first 2 years in Yeshiva. Didn't go home, no day off, nothing. B'chol he would learn a little less, right? Rosh Hashanah, he wasn't learning all day, he was davening all day. Yom Kippur, he would fast all day. That was the Seder, and it was hard. These were 15, 16, 17-year-old boys. It was really hard. So at one point, he went to the Rebbe and asked, it's just so, he went with a little mishlachat. It's so hard. Now this is 15, 16. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said to them, strange winds are blowing, and it's going to be very difficult in a few years. And now, Rav Nanas, he was talking to me in Hebrew, and he used a word that I can't imagine the Rebbe Rashab used, but I'll just quote what he said to me. He said, and this is your boot camp. Now, I don't know, I can't imagine the Rebbe Rashab said boot camp, right? But this is your boot camp.
What year is this?
1950. Something like that. Rebbe Rashab, 1915. Rebbe Rashab was Rebbe. 15. Rebbe Rashab was Rebbe until 1920. 1915. Maybe even earlier, 1913, 14. Rav Nanas got there Shavuos 1913. Got there Shavuos Tafresh Ayin Gimel. The Maimarim that he heard from the Rebbe was the Hemshech Ayin beis. That's what he heard as a bacher from the Rebbe Rashab. Those were the Maimarim he heard. So he got there in Ayin Gimel. He was there for 2 years. He was allowed to go home. He went home, met the Rebbe on the way home. He was given a message to give to the Rebbe's father, and the Rebbe's father introduced him to this young man who was in the back of the house. And then he went to his parents. Then he came back and was involved until they sent him to Siberia in the 30s for 20 years. He made it out of Siberia. How did he make it out of Siberia? Because he went to sleep every night. Why did he go sleep every night? He said he was calm. Why was he calm? Because the Frierdiker Rebbe told him he was going to get there to Israel, which was a crazy thing to say to someone in 1929, 1930 in Russia. As the Frierdiker Rebbe was leaving, 1930, 31, the Frierdiker Rebbe was leaving Russia, so Rav Lezer went to him, and the Rebbe gave him a bracha that he would make it out of Russia and make it there to Israel. So when they arrested him and sent him to Siberia, he knew he was going to get out alive, because the Rebbe told him he was getting there to Israel. So, and he did. Got here in 1967 and spent the last 30 years of his life here. Lived to be 99 and 6 months. Mm-hmm. We talked about the story, right? The Rebbe gave him back 20 years. He walked into the Rebbe when he first came to Eretz Yisrael. They sent him to the Rebbe for Yechidus. Here, the Chassidim here paid for a ticket that he could go see the Rebbe. And he walked into the Rebbe with 2 canes. He had gangrenous feet. 2 canes. And the Rebbe said he looks like an old man. So he was 70. So 70. So he said, I'm 70. So the Rebbe said, nah, you're not 70, you're 50. So he wasn't going to argue with the Rebbe. So he just said the day he was born. He didn't say, no, you're Rebbe. You don't say that to the Rebbe. So he said, I was born on such and such a day. Taf Reish Nun Zion. Now this was Chav Zion. So Nun Zion to Chav Zion is 70 years. 57 to 27, the next century is 70 years. So the Rebbe said, you call 20 years in Siberia living? He lived to be 99. He understood. The Rebbe just came back 20 years of his life. Said, okay, that doesn't count. That's not part of it. How you do that, I don't know. That's what happened. Here's a special Jew. Okay. So there's two different levels of light. There's the light before it seems, and there's a whole new level that's completely beyond that. That isn't, it's not, but neither of those levels of light are shaykh to a faida. Not shaykh to hard work. They're just there. Rabbi Shab says we're going to miss the hard work. V'lochein az, second last line, first paragraph. Lochein az, last line. Efech elamim, that's when the Yeshiva will transform the nations. Kemeshem b'mitziusam imkeimam, at first kufa, as they are in their place and in their mitzias, the nations of the world, all of them, they don't have to come to Eretz Yisrael, they'll just be where they are. Kulam la'avdei Shem echad, the pasuk says that all of the nations will serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shoulder to shoulder, so to speak. That's the first kufa of Mashiach. There'll be an incredible revelation. Okay, so those three levels, the second level will be even greater than that. There's those three levels are shaykh to the three different levels of learning. Nigla, that's Shlomo Melech, where there's still some battle involved, even though it's not in any way, shape, or form like the battle of Tefillah. And then Chassidus, the first level of Chassidus is Hasaga, Havana Hasaga, comprehending Chassidus, that's shaykh to now. And then the Re'iyah, the seeing Elokus, when we're learning Chassidus, we'll see the Eibishter in the second Kufa. Our learning Chassidus, right? Mashiach comes to teach Torah to the Jewish people, and that, but then we'll see the Torah, we'll see the godliness in the Torah. It'll all be revealed. Elo, let's go a little further. Shebazeh Gufa Yeshchila, in this itself, there's a difference between Kufa Yesherna to Kufa Shniya. To the first period of Mashiach to the second period. Kufa Yesherna. As the Rebbe says, a very subtle point. In the first time of Mashiach, lo yeh chidush b'maaseh bereishis. There won't be anything new in the creation, right? As we said earlier, the world will work the way the world works. The sun's going to come up, the sun's going to go down. If you want some wheat, you better plant it. Hagilu elokus sheyeh ba'olam, the revelation of elokus that there will be in the world, yeh mitzad gilui or ein sof, will be as a result of the revelation of or ein sof habilti gvul, unlimited, infinite godly light, shemeir b'chol makom, that will shine in every place. Oh, but Rabbi says something very interesting. Avaloi mitzad ha'olam gufa, but not in terms of the world itself, and not, so to speak, coming from the world itself. In other words, I'll be in a world, I'll be aware I'm in the world, and I'll be aware of the fact that there's a tremendous revelation of godliness in the world. But those two things are still somehow separate. I still relate to the godliness being revealed in the world. Just like when we talked about the difference between intellectual understanding and seeing something. Intellectual understanding means that idea is now part of my intellectual pool of ideas and pool of thought, but it's not mamish me. It's what I know, what I think, what I understand, but I'm not one with that idea. It's very powerful in terms of its effect on me, but I'm not one with it such that what could theoretically happen, someone could convince me that that idea is not true, and then it wouldn't be part of me anymore. Whereas something that I see, it's part of me. No one can tell me that it's not. Even if you explain to me till you're blue in the face intellectually how that can't possibly be, but okay, I understand what you're saying. You're right, but I saw it. Right? I saw it. So it's it's an integral part of me because and it'll always be there because it's not something that's shaykh to some intellectual understanding, which is, so to speak, outside of me. It's added on to me. I've just sort of piled it on, but it's not me mamish. Seeing becomes me. It's very much part of my reality. Okay, so what's the difference between the first kufa and the second kufa? What will our relationship to godliness be? In the first kufa, we'll see elokus, the same way you see a table. So now, yes, the table becomes very, very much part of your reality, but it's still not you. I mean, the table's the table. But it becomes very powerfully connected to who you are and what you are, and you feel a tremendous connection to the table, but you don't feel one with the table. So that's the first kufa. Let's see what the Rebbe says. Aval lo mitzad ha'olam gufa. Shemekeiv and sha'olam k'minhag yinayah. Because the world's going to act in its way. I mean, the world is not, in terms of itself, going to the world mitzad itself is not going to reveal godliness. Godliness will be revealed in the world, right? Whereas, ultimately, so to speak, just as a moshe for the difference. It says, "Ro kol basar yachdav ki shemash," right? That all of flesh together will see godliness. So there's a level in which einei basar, eyes of flesh, these eyes will see elokus. That's one state. So I'll see godliness and be aware of its existence very powerfully. But that's not the highest level. The highest kol basar, our flesh itself will see elokus. Will be one with elokus. It's not that I'll relate to elokus as something outside of myself, that I'm aware of its presence in my midst. I just won't feel I won't feel separate in any way, shape, or form from the Eibishter. What exactly that experience feels like, I have no idea. But that will be our experience in Tekufa Shniya. Tekufa Rishon, our experience will be this incredibly powerful and beautiful and pleasurable experience of God in our midst. Second kufa, we're just completely united with him. Can't really relate to any separation. That's much higher. So let's just see what the Rebbe says. Therefore, the revelation that the creations experience, v'bitul shelahem, and their feeling of nullification relative to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, as something in addition to their existence. Meaning they'll say, I'm bottled to the Eibishter, but there's a me saying that. Right? I love the Eibishter. Aval yesh misha oyev. There's a me, and I experience me, but not chas v'shalom in the way you and I experience me now. You and I experience me now in a state of absolute, again, we understand intellectually this isn't the case, but our experience is that we're independent of the Eibishter. The Eibishter is, so to speak, over there, and I'm over here, and I realize it's all about him, but I somehow want to get close to him. I want to be closer, but there's an I that I experience extremely powerfully. Okay, so now that's because of the hiddenness now. So then what will happen in the first kufa of Immerse Mashiach? That hiddenness will disappear, but there'll be an I that is experiencing this incredibly powerful closeness to a Kadosh Baruch Hu and the pleasure of such a closeness. The second kufa, how much experience of I there will be is unclear. Now, what does that mean if you're walking around? I don't know. It's going to be a pretty interesting experience. Won't feel separate, feel just one with, as opposed to experiencing the beauty of the revelation of it, which is, so to speak, something in addition to who I am. It's not me yet. I realize it's there and my life's all about it. So that's the ultimate in Bittul Hayesh. I am, but I'm completely bottled to him because this is incredible revelation. Now it might even be Bittul B'Metzias. Even higher, okay, but there's still a Metzias, still an existence of me. Just that existence is an existence of bittul, of nullification, of connection to God. This is probably bittul yesh, what the Rebbe is talking about.
What does the word dehanvarim mean? As if you like dehanvarim, that it creates
Hanivroim?
Yeah.
Yeah, de ha-nivraim, of the creations. De and he are prefixes.
Ah.
The dalet is a shin in Hebrew. Sorry, the Rebbe is just using Aramaic. But anyway. Okay. So it'll, so to speak, we'll still relate to the Eibishter as the Eibishter, and us as us. What, the second kufa? That's, I mean, that's, we'll see. Okay, we'll pick up from there tomorrow because there's no reason to rush with this. It's a very subtle point. We'll see the second half, and then we'll have to see footnote 39, which is very, very hard. There's some Chassidus in footnote 39, which we might understand, we might not understand. That's okay, but we'll still get the basic idea of these two incredibly powerful revelations, but the difference between one as opposed to the other. Right? The second kufa. Second kufa is a kufa where bodies aren't what they used to be. In the first kufa, it's still theoretically possible that there's something called, meaning the body that you have will be a body that could theoretically die. Whether or not people will die in the first kufa is an interesting question, right? But even if they don't die, you're still in a body that's theoretically shaykh to the idea of death. Second kufa, he is amazing. Chaim Nitzki. Eternal life. In a body. How does that work? It's obviously a different body. Right? There's the interesting question that things were always understood one way in terms of how it works. The question was always asked, those people who are alive at the time of Tchias HaMesim, what happens to them? Do they have to experience a momentary death because they're in a body that theoretically is relevant to the notion of death? And so that body has to die, and then immediately they come back as someone who's now in a whole new state. So that's how it was always understood. Until the winter of Tafshin Nun Beis. The winter of Tafshin Nun Beis, 1992, the Rebbe explained that that's not how it's going to work. And the Rebbe explained that there'll be Chayim Nitzchim Bli Shum Hefsek B'neiim. There'll be eternal life without any interruption between them. In other words, we'll just go straight into a whole new state. How is it that all of a sudden the Rebbe explained it that way? There are different ways of explaining how these things happen. But the Rebbe is clearly in Pode and besholom, in those parshas in the winter, Tafshin and beis, talks about Chayim Nitzchim Bli Shum Hefsek B'neiim, without any interruption in between. Which is a new way of understanding the transition from one state to another. That transition will happen without there having to be a disappearing of one state in order for the other to come into being. We'll see. We'll talk more about Tekufa Shniyah tomorrow morning, and we'll try to understand more things that are hard for us to understand.
Thank you very much.
Rabbi, did you say the second kufa, the second phase that we won't